Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Myah and this is Inspired by Myah. So I recently had the pleasure of sewing a client's graduation dress and I just love how classy and elegant it is. The pattern's super simple to follow and quick and easy to sew up, so if you'd like to recreate this pattern, then the pattern will be on my Etsy page and the link will be in my bio. So these are the pieces you'll need: one front dress piece cut on the fold, two back dress pieces, two back facings, one front facing cut on the fold, two sleeves cut on the fold, four cuffs cut on the fold, and one long strap. Mine was 2 centimeters by 150 centimeters. So the first thing I started with was the straps. You want to fold them in half and sew all the way down the length of the strap, then trim the excess fabric off and turn them right sides out. Now I made that sound really easy, but honestly turning straps out was a nightmare. I need to implement one of them sewing tips that you see on Instagram. But once that was done, I ironed the strap flat, making sure that the seam is on one side. I like how I positioned my iron because it made everything so much easier to do, but just make sure you don't burn your fabric. Once I did that, I also prepared the loops which we'll need for the lacing later, so I cut 6 strips about 2 to 2.5 centimeters long. Now take the straps, fold them in half and pin them to the markings we made on the front of the dress at the side seam and on the right side of the fabric. Attach them with a straight stitch and then trim any excess that's hanging off. Now overlock the side seams of the front and back of the dress separately. Now we need to insert the invisible zipper, so change your foot to the invisible zipper. So change your foot to the invisible zipper foot and sew it on. I'm not going to go into full detail on this only because I've covered it so many times in my videos, but once the zipper's in, sew the centre back seam up with a zipper foot. I like to change to a normal foot after passing the zip area as it holds the fabric in place a lot better, and then iron the seam open. For the facing, you want to place the shoulders together right sides facing and sew with a straight stitch. I forgot to mention earlier that I'm working with a velvet satin and the fabric is on the lightweight side, so it can tend to get swallowed into the sewing machine at the start and end of a stitch. But to prevent this, you can use some tracing paper or baking paper underneath your fabric at the start and end of your stitch and you won't have that problem anymore. Also, make sure you use a needle suitable for your project. Once the seams have been sewn, you want to press this seam flat and then overlock the bottom edge of the facing. After this, I went ahead and added my label on. Now pin the facing to the neck of the dress and sew with a straight stitch all around using the zipper foot and pivoting on the corners where the zip is. When you're sewing the zip area, sew as close as you can to the zipper teeth. Trim the seam allowance so the facing lies flat when we turn it out. Now we need to understitch the facing so it lies flat and stays put towards the inside of the dress. Iron the seam allowance towards the facing and top stitch the facing to the seam allowance near the seam line. After this, we can pin the shoulder of the dress and facing together right on the seams. Sew a stitch right in the center of the seam. This is called a stitch in the ditch and should be essentially invisible if done properly. This is done just to stop the facing from moving. Now we can work on the sleeves. You want to take the cuff pieces and place them right sides facing each other. Sew all around the sides, leaving the top, which is the smaller side. Once that's done, snip the corners and turn the cuffs right sides out. Use something pointy but with a blunt edge to get a sharp corner. Press the cuff flat and then stay stitch the top of the cuff so that the piece becomes solid. Next, we can attach the sleeves to the dress. For this pattern, the front and back armhole is the same, so all you have to worry about is the fabric being the right way. Place the sleeves onto the armholes right sides facing. I like to pin the center of the sleeve cap to the shoulder seam, then pin the 2 sides and then work my way through the middle. Next, sew with a straight stitch and iron the seam allowance away from the dress. Then overlock the seam. Now back to the cuffs, pin them to the sleeves right sides facing each other and sew all around with a straight stitch. Once that's done, overlock the seam and press the seam flat. I ironed the seam allowance upwards so that you can't see it through the cuff split. Now we can close the dress up, so you want to pin the side seams together right sides facing and sew from the sleeve to the bottom of the dress, making sure the armhole seams match up, and sew with a straight stitch and then iron the seam open. To hem, I did a rolled hem using my rolled hem foot. It can be a bit tricky to use, so I recommend practicing on some scrap fabric first, but once you get the hand of it, it's a dream to have. So I just finished the bottom of the dress and then I pressed it flat with the iron and I was done. A little tip that I do have for using a rolled hem foot is to kind of use your hand to manipulate the fabric into the curve of the foot. and then keep sewing. And then when you get to a seam, it's best to fold it yourself and manually sew it. So if you just take the fabric back out of the curve, sew like normal. Once you get past the seam, you can manipulate the fabric back into the curve and keep going. I hope that makes sense. Now, I don't have proper footage of this particular dress apart from these photos, as it was a client's. If you like this video, please subscribe and like for more, and let me know what you think in the comment section.